The big theme for the spiritual collective this week is karmic patterns. Specifically, what karmic patterns are still ingrained in your spirit body or you're playing out in your physical world, your daily routine, the things that you tell yourself, you tell others, and then act on. Where are those karmic patterns preventing you from stepping into leadership and being able to nurture yourself into being your most regal, royal version of yourself? We're just coming off of the Venus in Leo opposition to Pluto retrograde in Aquarius, and there's actually a very interesting story that's taking place amongst the stars. And while Venus has been the major player in all this astrological movement, you might be surprised to learn that the greater overarching story that's culminating at basically a chapter header point right now is the dichotomy between Saturn and Jupiter and the constant expansion and growth that those two celestial bodies causate as they interact with each other, as they play off each other, and as those energies, like a yin and yang, continue to try and balance and overcompensate one of the other. Now, before we get into this more and dive deeper into the details, I'm Michael the Hierophant. I'm a mystic and magi, and I invite you to join me every single Wednesday for my spiritual astrological divination-based workshop, Consciousness, Conjunctions, and Conversations. It's completely free. We get together on Zoom and we review the prior week's transits, aspects, celestial body movements, and we tell anecdotal community stories. We try to weave the thread and make astrology a little bit more bite-sized if you're new to it, or maybe just are a little bit on the upslope of learning to understand the shortcuts and how to use astrology as a divinatory tool, which is what I primarily use it as. We also look at the following week's transits, and I teach you how to delineate and allocate what transits and aspects are manifesting in your life for what spiritual purpose, and help make sense of some of the highs, the lows, the in-betweens, so that you can use all of these in order to understand what the Creator and what the gods themselves are trying to tell us about our lives, where we need to improve, show up more, or where we maybe just need to be more consistent. I think one of the greatest takeaways in my class is that it helps you delineate your place in the cosmic narrative. We are all taking place in a huge collective storyline, and that's why we can use astrology like the weather. As above, so below. And in this situation, we're the below, the planets are above. And as we go through this dark forest that we call life, we don't remember being here before, at least to our knowledge, and there's no better compass to get to where we want to be than to look at the stars above. So please, I encourage you to check out the link in my bio, and I hope to see you in my class every Wednesday at 6:30 Pacific. So let's dive into what's going on. We're coming off of this Venus opposing Pluto in Aquarius retrograde. And Venus opposing Pluto in retrograde, boiled down into simplicity, is the idea that wherever the Leo and Aquarius is in your chart, there are desires emanating through your inner child that are not compatible with karmic collective programming that has been imprinted on your spirit body. And these karmic programmings will manifest as, like I said at the beginning, things you tell yourself, things you tell the world, things you tell people close to you. And as you tell yourself, as you tell the world these things, you are solidifying and concretizing a belief system. And we all know by this point, if you practice astrology, if you are into quantum physics, into new age spirituality, into just more regular practical spirituality, we know that our belief system designs and manufactures the world around us. And that's how karmic patterns work. So in this specific case, our inner child has these desires. Our inner child has these things that it wants, he, she, they, that they want that are not achieved or in our hand right now. And we're having this natural opposition because an opposition tends to manifest as an external situation. We're having this situation provoked, as I call it. And what I'm going to do in this video is I'm actually going to break down the different elements of all the transits happening right now and how they contribute to this greater overarching story that is taking place between Saturn and Jupiter, and for all intent and purposes, probably happens throughout most of eternity, as the celestial bodies are always in a circular cyclical movement, and so we're just at a different point in this journey. So the opposition, which is what the Venus-Pluto opposition is, oppositions are, they work by nature of Saturn. And if you watch my videos enough, you'll know that I tend to attribute aspect natures as being in service of. So an opposition, being in the nature of Saturn, is actually working in service of Saturn. So let's take a look at what Saturn's doing right now. Saturn is culminating the last few retrograded degrees of Aries before it moves into Pisces. And fortunately, we won't have to deal with this set of degrees of Saturn going retrograde in it again. So this is pass 2 of 3. The third pass will when it goes in direct motion and goes over these degrees again for the final cleanup, where we can kind of say we understand what the lessons were that we did not impose upon our lives. So we also have the moon currently in Libra, which is opposing Chiron in Aries retrograde. So Chiron in Aries retrograde is offering us situations and opportunities. Because it's of the element of fire, we tend to find ourselves in situationally reactive examples of this. So Chiron there's a wound that's being triggered that we've already seen before. We probably would have seen this wound pop up the first week of July, which is when Chiron first went over these degrees that it's now retrograding over. And the moon in opposition to Chiron suggests, once again, a situation unfolding in our external reality that's causing a need to compromise, an incompatibility with what we're feeling and the wound that Chiron is provoked right now. Now, with the moon being in Libra, it means our emotions are in a state of wanting to balance things, and we actually might have a tendency to fall into people-pleasing behaviors, which is one of the shadow sides of any sort of Libra placements. But especially with emotional placements like the moon, we might fall into like, oh, well, I better not say that, or I better not do that because I want to make sure that all my relationships are harmonious, which is what Libra ultimately wants of us. And since we have Mars also in Libra, Mars rules Aries. So whatever Mars is doing in Aries is again working on behalf of the Saturn-Neptune retrograde in Aries right now. So we can kind of attribute Mars's drive forward and our initiation to act on our emotional body as being directly involved with Saturn's storyline in this particular part of the story. However, with the moon opposing Chiron, it means that our tendency to want to people please, our tendency to want to negotiate and balance the scales of our relationships with things, with money, with people, it doesn't work, and it won't work with what Chiron is trying to show us. So there's a balancing system inside the balancing system. It's like we want to like make it good for everybody, but there's a suggestion here that sometimes we can't make it good for everybody, and we just have to do the best we can. Now, all of this to say, Mars is in a Venus-ruled sign of Libra. It's the masculine sign of Venus. So we can also see that Mars isn't just working for the benefit of the Saturn-Neptune retrograde in Aries, it's also working on behalf of Venus's storyline. And Venus, last night, sextiled Uranus. That was kind of like this flourish at the end of the Venus trining Saturn-Neptune conjunction, and then the Venus opposing Pluto. And that Venus sextiling Uranus in Gemini suggests to me that the Venus sextiling Gemini was the creative resolve to our desires. It's essentially the part of the story where we realize that our desires are not compatible with old karmic patterns, and it doesn't necessarily, the Venus sextiling Uranus isn't necessarily giving us the key to breaking that karmic pattern, but it's giving us the key to continue forward and chasing our ambitions and our dreams in the Venetian area of our life, which is Leo, and Leo is ruled by the sun. So all of this is to benefit our development of our ego, of our self, and a further pleasure benefit, Venus, for our ego, for our human vessels. So we also, at the same time that all of this is happening, and it seems not related, but I will show you how it is, Lilith in Scorpio is trining Jupiter in Cancer. Now, Jupiter in Cancer has been showing us all the areas of life where we have not nurtured ourselves enough or taken care of ourselves, basically mothered some element of ourselves. So if this is like your first house and you're a Cancer rising, it means that your duty in this life is to mother your own self-development. If you're a Leo rising and it's your 12th house, that means that you need to really mother and nurture your karmic burdens. And again, the 12th house is the unseen, so we need to nurture our spirituality and our connection with the divine. And you can apply this nurturing characteristic to anything. If you have a 7th house Cancer, it means you need to nurture and mother your karmic relationships, your one-on-ones, your really close best friends, your relationships, your close family, etc. So we won't go too far into that. However, Lilith in Scorpio is asking for us to transmute, which Scorpio does. We're turning lead into gold in the sun. Lilith is asking for us to transmute our deepest, darkest, suppressed desires and basically make something positive of it. Make our weakness, make something that we're ashamed of or have guilt about into a power. So when Jupiter trines Lilith, there is a fusion of these energies where this is benefiting Jupiter's storyline. Jupiter is essentially saying, hey, we need to take those dark, suppressed desires of yours, bring those out into the light, because let's be real, you can't be a full, complete, enveloped, evolved version of yourself if you are still suppressing things, if you are pushing things down, and you need to get honest with yourself. Because do you think a king, and this is what Jupiter is asking us, do you think a king suppresses his desires? Do you think a queen suppresses the things that she wants in this life, or her raw primal instincts? And the answer is no. So all of this is to benefit Jupiter's story. And I'm going off about Jupiter's story because the first part of this video, Venus opposing Pluto, is all about Saturn's story. So Saturn and Neptune are giving us this physical and spiritual reality check in the Aryan section of our lives, but it's all directly connected with the greater overarching story. And if you've been paying attention to astrology for the past few years, we had like the Jupiter square Saturn. This is all basically just micro-threaded movements of this Jupiter-Saturn dynamic, where we are being asked to break down, basically break down the walls of structure that have kept us boxed into one area of our life and expand into our highest growth and highest state of evolved consciousness. If you like these astrological narratives and you are into what I do with astrology, how I use it as a tool, I encourage you to check out the link in my bio. It's an evergreen link. I won't re-pitch the class to you, but I really hope to see you there. We have a lot of fun, and I really feel like me and my students, we get a lot out of this. I'm constantly learning things through my students. I know my students are constantly learning things through me. This is very much a astrological self-help group. This is not necessarily just for me to tell you, this means this, this means this, this means this. This is to actually help you in your spiritual journey and help you get further in your life. There is a reason that people who attend my class show up. Once they show up, they tend to show up week after week because they are getting something from it, and I'm really proud of that. So if I don't see you in class, I'll see you on the next video, and best of luck. Turn those wounds into something valuable, because that is how you are going to get further in this next step of your life.